Hello and welcome to lesson 4. I'm your teacher today, Mrs. Burton, and your lesson title for today is What Impact Did the War Have Around the World? So let's get ready for our lesson. You're going to need your history workbook and we are on lesson 4. You're going to need a pen to write with. You might want some scrap paper if you want to make some notes. And you need to make sure that you have got no distractions. So telly needs to be turned off, phone needs to be put away. So press pause and get yourself ready for your lesson today. So we're going to start with a knowledge recall quiz. This is activity 4.1 in your activity workbook. So last lesson we looked at what was it like to live and fight on the Western Front. You looked at that lesson with Miss Cherry. So there are 5 questions I'd like you to look at. So what was the area between the trenches called? What condition killed around 75,000 soldiers between 1914 and 18? What was the mental breakdown that some soldiers suffered from called? What did it mean to go over the top? And when did the armistice take place? You need to press pause and do the questions on your workbook on activity 4.1. And here are the answers. So the area between the trenches was called no man's land. The condition that killed around 75,000 soldiers was trench foot. The mental breakdown that some soldiers suffered from was called shell shock. And what did it mean to go over the top? That means to climb out of your trench and charge towards the enemy. When did the armistice take place? That's 11 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918. So press pause. Mark your answers, giving yourself a mark out of 5. And then any of the answers that you didn't get right, or maybe any that you didn't put down, please write the answers in now. So our lesson title for today is What Impact Did the War Have Around the World? So you've got 3 objectives. One is to understand that World War I is a global conflict. Number 2 is to understand where the fighting took place. And number 3 is to understand the role that British Empire soldiers played in World War I. You need to update your knowledge organiser with the information that we are going to be looking at today. Okay, so your starter then, this is activity 4.2 in your history workbook. So World War I was known as the first global war, where lots of different countries fought against each other. I'd like to have a look at the world map, and I'd like to write down 3 countries that you think might have been involved in World War I. I've given you a list on the side there just to give you a helping hand. So activity 4.2, write down 3 countries you think might have been involved in World War I. So press pause and write down your answers. And here are the answers. So Britain, France, Russia, USA, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy and Turkey. So press pause and write down any that you missed. So what impact did the war have around the world? So World War I became known as the Great War because it affected people all over the world. It was the biggest war anyone had ever known. The war was fought between 2 powerful groups, the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. The 3 nations of the Triple Alliance were Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy, and the 3 nations of the Triple Entente, France, Russia and Great Britain. Now, long before World War I began, these countries in these groups had made arrangements to work together and to help each other out if there was a war. So that means when war does break out in 1914, Europe's already divided into 2 sides and a rather large majority of countries is already involved in World War I. Now, each of the countries involved got their troops ready to fight. Troops are groups that fought together and included the army and the navy, so people on land and in the sea. Now, the war saw lots of battles take place in different countries. Quite a lot of the fighting took place in France and Belgium. And later, many other countries also became involved. We're going to have a look at this today in our lesson. Fighting took place in Italy, Africa, Gallipoli, and in the Middle East. And they had lots of soldiers coming from the British Empire who served during World War One. Now, we have touched on the idea of empire before in the last lesson. So that's people who live in different countries that are under control of Britain. So there were 5 million British soldiers, 628,000 Canadian soldiers, 400,000 Australian soldiers, 120,000 New Zealand, South Africa, 100,000 soldiers from there, nearly 1.5 million Indian soldiers, and then there were 134,000 soldiers from other colonies. So it's clear that people from Britain weren't just fighting, there were people from British Empire and British colonies who fought in the war. So it has a huge impact around the world. Your main activity for today is going to be to read through the information about where the war was fought around the world. So there are different places in which the war takes place, and I'd like you to write down any keywords for me. So U-boat, global conflict, and that word empire has come up again there. I'd like to write down what those words mean in your own words, please. Your second activity is going to be to have a look at this map that I've put down, and it shows where the fighting took place in World War One. I'd like you to read the information, and I'd like to write down 3 things which happened in each area. So the Italian front, the war at sea, the Eastern front, and the Gallipoli and Africa. All the information is headed. You just need to write down 3 things that happen in each area. That is activity 4.3 in your workbook. If you'd like a little bit more to do, you can have a look at activity 4.4. So that is to research the new technologies that emerged because of World War One. Some of those are touched upon in the writing. You can have a look at this website. This is a BBC website, and you can have a look at some of the new things that were introduced. As ever, if you have any issues, please email your teachers or correspond with them via Show My Homework. Thank you for listening.